Hello everyone, this is Rebecca, and today we'll be going into chapter 4 of Secondary 1, G3, and the topic is Basic Algebra and Algebraic Manipulation. So finally, welcome to learning algebra, and I hope that the learning has been good for you thus far. Algebra is one of the biggest topics when it comes to Secondary 1 mathematics syllabus. It is also very foundational. And at every step of your learning, do ensure that there are no gaps in between. Algebra is one topic that the concepts are built and layered one on top of the previous. And when there are no learning gaps, you can really ensure that your foundation is strong and you are ready to take on the next part of learning for this entire topic. So let's move on into handout 1. Handout 1 is consists of 5 questions, and the first question is taken from Ang Mo Kio Secondary School, 2022 EOY Paper 1, Question 8. In this question, it requires us to do 2 parts. First part, to factorize the expression completely, and the second part is to simplify a given expression. So let's take a look at part A. So factorize 4p minus 24pq minus 16pr completely. Let's put down the first line in our working. As we do so, we also ensure that there is no transfer error. Now, within each of the terms, let's look out for the common factor in terms of the coefficient first. So what are the coefficients here? We have 4, 24, and 16. So amongst these three, the common factor will be 4. Okay, I am going to divide 4 out of each of the term. And what I have left for the first term is p. Okay, second term, 24, I divide by 4, we get 6pq. And the last term, 16 divided by 4, 4. And pr tags along. Is there any other factor that is common amongst the three terms? So now let's go in and take a second look. P, negative 6pq, negative 4pr. Oh yes, we will have found common factor p. Now instead of a numerical value, we also can consider variables that are common throughout the terms to factorize out. So in this case, we factorize out p. I'll bring out p, and that means for each term, I will have to divide it by p. So p divided by p, I have 1. Negative 6pq divided by p, so negative 6q. And finally, negative 4pr, I divide by p, I will get negative 4r. Okay, and let's do a final check to see if there are any more common factors. 1, negative 6q, negative 4r. Nope. So this will be our final answer. And the expression is factorized completely. Okay, so let's put down the solution. Okay, now part B, simplify the expression. Let's write down the question. And as we write, we also ensure there is no transfer error. Now let's look further into the question and see what are the clues we can pick up in order to continue to simplify it. Firstly, there are 2 fractions. So when there are 2 fractions and we are asked to simplify, means that we have to combine the 2 fractions to make one single fraction. Next, perhaps let me just type it down. Combine 2 fractions to make one fraction. Okay, and the next thing to take note of is that both fractions are unlike. Okay, this is because the denominators of both fractions cannot be multiplied by an integer value to give the other denominator. So we will need to convert both fractions into its equivalent form such that the denominators reflect their lowest common number. Okay? And what else? I think from there, we should be able to have enough handles to look into the question. Okay, so let's take a look at denominators 3 and 5. In order to combine, we have to make our denominators the same. So I am going to multiply the first fraction by 5 throughout and the second fraction by 3 throughout because 15 is the LCM of 3 and 5. Following that, I am going to simplify my first fraction. So let's start by multiplying 2 with 5, the multiples itself. And I am going to copy down whatever that is within the bracket of the first numerator, which is 2n plus n. Denominator 15. And for the second one, 3, bring it to the front, copy down whatever that's within the bracket, and denominator 15. Okay, so now I have converted both fractions to make it equivalent and such that the denominators are the same. And when they are the same, we can add them together under the same denominator. This is how we put it down. Okay. Now, as we combine both fractions into one, it is common. It is common that some students actually get so excited and caught up with the numerators that they forgot to write down the denominator altogether. And if they do forget that particular part of the working, they may continue the rest of the question just working on the numerator with no denominator, and that would be truly a careless mistake, a careless oversight. So please ensure that both numerators and denominators are written down at every part of the question. All right, from here, we can simplify the numerator by expansion. So as we expand, 10 times 2n, 20n, plus 10 times n, plus 9m. Okay, now we have positive 3 multiplied by 5n, but there's a negative sign next to it. So positive 3 times negative 5n. So that will give us negative 15n. Take note of the change in sign over here, out of 15. Okay, now following that, numerator, we can rearrange the terms. Let's put the m terms together first, followed by the n terms. And we simplify each variable. Finally, this will be our answer. So this is a 3-mark question. You have to ensure every single step is clear and there is a good follow through. Let's move on to the next question. It's also taken from Ang Mo Kio Secondary School, 2022 EOY. Few questions down the line, paper 1, question 9. So this question tells you the values of A, B, and C, and we are asked to evaluate the expression. So this is a question that requires us to do substitution of values. Yeah. So when we do substitution of values, the safest way to do so is to substitute each value within brackets. Okay? Allow me to explain more about this. So what I'm trying to say is that when we substitute all these values of A, B, and C into the expression, any substitution that takes place, put these numbers within the safe space of a bracket. We do not want to compromise on our answer when we have squares, cubes, and certain powers that might affect the answer due to its negative nature, especially negative numbers. Okay. So the safest way is to substitute each value, and when you do so, replace these variables with the values in brackets. So AB plus 2C squared out of A. So now, instead of AB, I'm going to replace it with negative 2 plus 2C squared out of A. Okay, so it should look like that. This shows substitution, right? A direct reflection of what the values actually stand for each variable. Okay, and now let's input whatever that we see over here that we've written into our calculator. Okay, so our calculator values, the display of our working should look exactly like whatever that we have written down. Okay, my solution, my answer is negative 13. Okay, and whatever we have from the calculator, that will be our answer. Let's move on. Next one, also taken from Ang Mo Kio Secondary School, 2022 EOY, Paper 2, Question 1A. Expand and simplify. Right. So let's take a look. Wow, there are brackets as well. Okay, so for this particular question, we always ensure that we copy down the question first. All right. Now, the first thing to do when we are asked to simplify is to expand first. Okay, and when we want to expand an expression, it always comes from where the brackets are. So over here, we have negative 2 outside of the bracket. And we're going to multiply each of these terms within the bracket by negative 2. So we are going to multiply it this way. Okay, so first term is to multiply negative 2 by 3x. And the second term is to multiply negative 2 by negative 7y. So let's continue. We move on. Okay, now we are not going to do anything to 6x plus 2y yet. So we are going to copy these two terms down. So 6x plus 2y. All right, next. Negative 2 times 3x. Negative 6x. Negative 2 times negative 7y. So negative and negative makes positive 14y. Following that, let's rearrange the terms to put the x terms first, followed by the y terms. We will have 6x, take away 6x, plus 2y, plus 14y. And from here, we could actually tell that 6x and negative 6x cancels each other out. They neutralize each other's value. We're left with 2y plus 14y, so we end up with 16y. This will be our answer. Okay, now following that, we'll move on to BSS, Benjamin Secondary School, 2022 EOY, Paper 1, Question 5. Expand and simplify the following. Similar instructions, right? And in fact, for question A, it looks quite similar to the previous question we have just done, but we have 2 rounds of expansion to do. Let's copy down the question first. And I am going to draw the arrows to show how the expansion will be done. So I am going to circle the negative 4 and I am going to expand it to each of the terms within the first bracket going to circle the negative 3, and I'm also going to expand it within each of the term within the second bracket. Okay. So you notice what I am doing when I underline the terms within the bracket is that I also underline the sign, the symbol that comes before the term, so that you know whether you're multiplying in with to a positive variable or a negative variable. That matters. That also serves as a check for us when we come back to the question again in our WA or in our EOY. Now, following that, negative 4 times negative 2x, 8x, negative 4 times y, negative 4y, negative 3 times x, negative 3x, negative 3 times negative 6y, positive 18y. Okay. Now, we rearrange the terms. Put the x terms first. So we simplify. 8x take away 3x, we get 5x. 4y, negative 4y plus 18y, we get positive 14y. So this is our answer. Let's move on to the next question. Here we deal with similar instructions, but the nature of the numbers are in fractional form. How do we go on from here? Well, the first step is actually to remove the brackets by expansions. Okay, so we have positive 7 to multiply to each of the terms within the bracket. And let's go ahead with it. So 5x out of 3, I am going to bring the x out of the fraction. So it would look like that, 5 out of 3x. Okay, so maybe just a tip for you to take note of. 5x out of 3, when x is put in the numerator, it could be brought out of the fraction and put this way. Okay, now it is not equals to 5 out of 3x. 5 out of 3x is actually equals to 5 out of 3 multiplied by 1 out of x. X is in the denominator. So these two are actually different. Okay, whatever that's at the top row is different from the bottom row. As long as x is within the denominator itself, right? It is in the denominator. If x is with the numerator, it could be brought out. So we could say that 5 out of 3x is not equals to 5 out of 3x. Okay, these two are not the same. Okay, let me just put this tip by the side. So when you refer to it, you know that there is actually a distinction between these two types of expressions. Okay, now, away from the tip, let's go back to the question. Now we expand 7 into each of the terms within the bracket. So we have positive 7 out of 4x minus 7x plus 14x. Okay. Now you realize that each of these terms they are actually x terms. So I am going to bring x out of it. I'm factorizing x out. Now, next, what we are required to do is to simplify the terms in the numbers within the bracket. Okay, so 5 out of 3, 7 out of 4, we could multiply it to get the common denominator of 12. And from there, we will end up with 20 out of 12. That's 21 out of 12 minus 7 plus 14. I think x. Okay. And from here, we will have 41 out of 12 minus 7 is 14. X. Okay. Okay. Few steps down the road. 41 out of 12. Now, when we have a negative 7 and we add 14, we will end up with positive 7. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just plus a 7 here by combining negative 7 plus 14. Okay, and from here, I will get 7 wholes, 41 out of 12. Well, 7 wholes, 41 out of 12. 41 out of 12. If I were to work it out, I will get 3 wholes, 5 out of 12. So 7 plus 3 wholes, 5 out of 12. I will end up with, pardon me, 10 wholes, 5 out of 12. So, oh, okay. I will need to include my x. You see, I had actually accidentally left out x as I worked it out. So my final answer is 10 wholes, 5 out of 12 x. I would say this is more of a tricky question requiring a lot of focus. Let's move on to the next one. Again from Bendemeer, 2022 EOY, paper 1, question 5. Express the following as a single fraction in its simplest form. So let's take a look at the denominators. Denominators 3 and 8. So we will have to work out the common multiple, which is 24. Because 3 and 8 are both unlike. Okay, so let's copy down the question first. Going to multiply numerator and denominator by 8 for the first fraction, and multiply numerator and denominator by 3 for the second fraction. Next, I am going to rearrange my first fraction by bringing the 8 to the front. And same for the second fraction by bringing the 3 to the front. Okay, now I think we can combine both fractions under the same denominator. Following that, let's do an expansion. I'm going to multiply 8 to each of the terms within the bracket, and multiply negative 3 to each of the terms within the bracket as well. So let's work it out. Negative 40x plus 24y minus 3y minus 9x out of 24. Okay, so this is one of the most crucial steps in the question. Ensure that every part is correct. Now, we rearrange the terms now. So we end up with negative 49x plus 21y out of 24. So this will be our answer. If you are uncomfortable about the question, about your answer starting with a negative sign, you could actually rearrange the terms in the numerator to start from a positive value. This works out as well. Personally, I would prefer to do it the second way, start on a positive sign. Okay, so let's move on to part B. Part B deals with fractions again, quite similar to part A, but this time round, within each of the numerator is something that we have to expand on. So between 2 and 5, let's find common denominator, which is 10, right? So okay, let me just write down the question first. So in order to have common denominator 10, I'm going to multiply the first fraction by 5 throughout and the second fraction by 2 throughout. Following that, let's multiply the multiples together. So we have 15 bracket x plus 1 out of 10, 8 bracket x minus 1 out of 10. Let's combine both fractions into one. And from here, we are going to expand. Take 15, multiply out. Positive 8, multiply out. Okay, and let's work it out. 15x plus 15 plus 8x minus 8 out of 10. Rearrange the terms. Twenty-three x plus 7 out of 10. So this would conclude the 5 questions from Handout 1. I hope that you have learned much and it was indeed a fruitful session. I will see you in Handout 2 soon. Goodbye.